Well, I'll tell you what, man. I mean, even from a customer of yours, there's something unique about what you do. I don't know if it's it seems like you have a vision, not only for the shop, but even for cuisine too. Like the sandwiches, the food that I eat at your place, I've just never experienced anywhere else. But at the end of the day, it's sandwiches, it's wraps, it's burgers. Right. But what is it? How do you come up with what you come up with? Because I think that's what sets you apart.
Yeah, we get creative, and that was the scary thing with trying to open something new in Butler was I want to have a level of creativity, and you want something that reflects like your identity, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So I opened the shop and based it on somewhere that I felt like I'd want to hang out for 12 to 16 hours a day. Some place that I didn't get tired of, that wasn't boring, wasn't whatever. But when you look at a lot of other independents in Butler, especially ones that have been successful and lasted for many, many, many years, their menus are fairly similar. You can go on and I'm guilty of it too. Like everybody has a Reuben, right? Mm-hmm. And as soon as you say Reuben, you know what's on it, right?
Sure.
So a lot of places have, a meatball hoagie, and you know what's on it. It's very safe. It's very familiar. And that's good because that sells. People don't necessarily like to experiment with their food that much. They do more now because there's a lot more exposure to it. But 10 years ago when we were opening the shop, people in Butler were pretty set in what they like to eat. They went to the same restaurants on the same days and ordered the same things and sat in the same seats.
Everyone was a regular somewhere.
Right.
Yeah.
And so writing that menu, I knew I wanted to be able to be creative, but I also knew I had to root it in things that were familiar in order for people to give it a shot.
Okay.
So the first menu, if I were to pull out the first menu that we opened with and you looked at it side by side with the menu today, they would look very different. There are a handful of things that have always made the cut no matter what we changed on the menu. But there were a lot more familiar things with just like a small twist to it or a little update to it. And once people would come in, we really had to train our service staff to be able to direct people to things on the menu because we named things differently. The kitchen, like I said, it's a place where the sense of it has a kind of an elementary sense of humor to it, where fart jokes are still like real funny.
Sure.
So, that was something that I always liked about the kitchen. Mm-hmm. And so I wanted that to kind of come through on the menu too. So there were a lot of different puns, things like that on the menus, and that's how I named things. But then we found out real fast that people would come in and they would just skim through the menu with the name and never actually read the description. And they would say, I don't understand your menu. I don't, what is this? And I'm like, looking at it going, it's pretty clear.
Yeah, right. There. Just read it.
And after probably about the first 3 or 4 days of being open and hearing that a couple times a day, I realized it's because people are only looking at the title, the heading. And because none of these names are familiar, they stop there.
Huh.
So then we would go through with the staff and say, okay, if somebody likes buffalo chicken, mm-hmm. direct them to the backfire because it's buffalo chicken.
Right.
It's just not called buffalo chicken on the menu.
Right.
That's in the description.
Right.
So we had to learn to do that and really kind of direct people, even though the food was slightly more creative, just the wording was not familiar enough. But once people got to try it and they started to trust us, then I could start, every time I changed the menu, I could get a little more creative. Right. So that's how it kind of came to be what it is today. We always have done like a special every day. So that when we first opened, that was where I focused on being real creative on something. And there would be times we didn't sell one.
Really?
Just because it was early and people were trying the regular part of the menu first. And And that was where you develop that trust with them,
Yeah.
because people aren't going to come out to eat if they don't trust you.
Sure.
You know, you can get them sick. They don't want to waste their money on something that they didn't like.
Right.
So you really have to gain people's trust before you can kind of really get a little too far outside the box. But, you know, slow and steady for the last 10 years, we've been able to keep that going, and people let us get a little more creative and a little more creative. And now that's actually, you know, we're 9.5 years in, and it doesn't feel like it to me, but my group of cooks that are in the shop now, most of them are in their early 20s. So they were kids.
They were kids
when I opened, and they saw that progression, and they were interested. They became interested in food, like, you know, in high school. They went to Vo-Tech or whatever, and now they're at the shop working because that was the place that they tried something different for the first time and they liked it. So it's neat to have that happen. It's humbling, and then it's also an eye opener because you realize, man, it's been a while. You know?
Right. Because I mean, this has been a chunk of your life at this point.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be March. We've been 10 years.
Wow.
I'll be 40 in April, so
yeah,
that's a quarter of my life at the shop.
Are you guys doing anything for your tenure?
I have no idea.
Okay. Obviously, you're gonna have to wait and see what happens in our country, but like,
yeah, I have no idea, because at 5 we started replacing tabletops and stuff.
Okay.
But then we didn't get that completely done until this year. Again, you know, when we opened, all of the tables, all of the chairs, they were all mismatched because it was what I found for either next to nothing or free, and fixed it and stuck it in there. And then when we were coming up on the 5-year anniversary, I found a bunch of bowling lanes that I wanted to turn into tabletops. But it just took forever to get them all cut, all sanded, all sealed, all finished, all trimmed.
Right.
So it took what was supposed to be, hey, 5-year anniversary, we're going to make new tables for the whole shop, turned into, well, we got this row done. and then I'd take on another project.
Yeah.
And my focus would be there for a while, and I'd be like, okay, well, now we got this row done. So that was the plan for 5 years, was new tables that all matched. But
yeah,
I mean, we could actually almost stretched it out to be started at 5 and completed at 10. You know?